we've already looked briefly at how to use the standard out stream. However, in Node, we can work with both standard in and standard out, and we don't have to use them as a stream. So in this lesson, we're going to look at some of the details behind using standard in and standard out. Let's start with reading from standard in and writing to standard out. We can get standard in by doing process.stdin, standard in. And it's good practice to begin by setting the encoding. So we'll just set encoding to UTF-8. And process.standardin is a readable stream, but we can access a readable stream in other ways than just piping. We can do standardin.on, and we can wait for the data event. When that data event comes, we can run a callback that takes the chunk and does something with it. And we could do console.log and write out the chunk, but another way to do that would be to write it to standard out. So we can do process.standardout.write, and let's just write chunk, and then we'll add the actual chunk after that. And I'll just say chunk.toString. There we have our chunk being written out. There's another event that you may want to listen for, and that's process.standardin.onEnd. And this is when the standard in readable stream ends. And in this case, we can just do process.standardout.write, and we'll write end. Now, let's give this a try. What we can do is let's cat out our fib.txt file. If we just do that, you can see that's the contents of the file. And so now all we can do is pipe that content to Node, and we'll run our standard.js file. And so what we're doing here is we're piping the output from this command to our standard.js file, and that input will come in via standard in to Node standard.js. And so now, if we run this, notice what we have. We have chunk, here's our chunk of data, and then we have end printed out, which shows you that these event listeners are listening for data coming in on our standard in readable stream, and then we're working with that in some way, and then we can know when the stream ends. And of course, the way we're working with it in these functions is by just printing it back out to process.standardout. So this simple example uses both standard in and standard out. However, remember I said we can work with input and output as streams, and you've already seen how we can pipe to the output stream. Let's look at another quick stream example, and this uses a third type of stream, which is a transform stream. We looked at readable and writable streams already, but a transform stream is kind of like both put together. A transform stream can read data from another stream, so it's like a writable stream in that way, but then it can also output data and that can be read by a third stream. So in that way, it's also like a readable stream. So let's create a transform stream, and I'll just call it trans, and we will get this by doing require stream.transform, and we actually have to call that transform function to create an instance of trans. New is not required, so I'll leave it out in this case. And then we have to create an _transform function. And this function takes 3 parameters. The first one is the chunk of data that is coming in. The second one is the encoding. And the third one is a done function, or you could call it next or processed or something like that. But you can kind of see how this is working if you realize that this function signature looks very similar to the function signature of our writable stream. If I look at out.js, you can see that our writable stream that we created had a chunk, the encoding, and a next function. And we could do something with the chunk, and then when we were ready to get the next chunk of data, we called next. This is exactly how transform here works. But then inside transform here, we have a this.push function. And this .push should remind you of our Fibonacci readable stream, where we push data out of the stream by doing this .push or rs.push. Same thing. The point here is that a transform stream has both the properties of a writable stream and a readable stream, which makes this the kind of thing we could use between a readable stream and a writable stream. So what we're going to do with this simple stream here is a kind of cipher. So let's take that chunk coming in, and it's a buffer, so we're going to convert it to a string, and then let's go ahead and split it so we have an array of all of the characters in the chunk, and then let's map over this array for each character, and then what we want to do is get the character code for this character. So the way we have to do that is by doing character.charCode@0, and then let's add 1 to that so that we shift it 1 character to the right, and then let's wrap all this in another function call, which will be string.fromCharacterCode. And so what we're doing here is we take our character, convert it to a number, add 1 to it, and then convert it back to a string. So we're basically creating a shift cipher, I believe it's called. And so then let's wrap all of this into this.push call. So we push this chunk of data out the other end of our stream. And then after all that, we can call done. And so now we only have to use this transform stream. So I can say process.standardin, and we're going to pipe that to our transform stream. And from there, we're going to pipe that to process.standardout. So one more time, what we're doing is we are taking some input on process.standardin, piping it to our transform stream, and then piping it to process.standardout. So let's see this in action. What we can do here is echo node.js is cool, right? And if we just echoed that out, that would be printed as standard out. However, instead, I'm going to pipe that to standard.js. And it seems like we have an error, invalid non-string or buffer chunk. Okay, the problem is actually very simple. When we pushed here, we were actually still pushing an array because an array, of course, is what is returned from map. We have to do one more thing, and we have to join with nothing between each character. And that will convert our array back into a string. Okay, sorry about that. But with that simple fix, we should now be able to echo our message, pipe it to our JavaScript file, and then you can see we have our encoded message printed out. So as you can see, it's easy to use standard in and standard out both with streams or just kind of with a more regular JavaScript pattern. But either way, it's very easy to create utilities that take input from the command line or print input back out to the command line, which means you can use JavaScript to create little utilities that you use in your daily development workflow. Isn't that handy?